Hi, today we have Town Mouse, Country Mouse by Jan Brett. One morning, Town Mouse woke up shivering from a dream about the kitchen cat who prowled the house. I need a vacation, he told his wife. Let me take you to see the countryside where I was born. Life is quiet and peaceful there. The sun shines brightly every day and the air is so clear that you can see the stars at night. And nothing will prepare you for the taste of the wild blackberries. Let's go right away, she said. So the Town Mouse and the wife packed a picnic and set off in the country. The Country Mouse and her husband were on their tree stump house, exhausted from searching for food and avoiding the hungry owl who lived nearby. Sometimes I wished we lived in a town house where all the food you can eat is right there in the pantry. They say that the smell of cheese makes your whiskers tingle. Mine are tingling already, the husband explained. Town mice were outside the Country Mouse house putting a huge chunk of cheese in the middle of their picnic cloth. See that? The Country Mice peered down at it. They heard the Town Mouse explain, "This is the life. Wildflowers, spring peepers, if only we lived here." The Country Mice crept out. "You like it here?" they asked. "Why, we've always wanted to live in a town house." The Town Mouse offered them a nibble of cheese. "Why don't we trade houses?" he said. "Would you?" asked the Country Mouse. Her mouth was stuffed full of the delicious cheese. "We'll leave right away," she said. As they said goodbye to each of the mice, thought they had the better part of the bargain. It was dark when the Country Mice arrived in town and found the house. They tiptoed inside and wandered into the sewing room. See it? Where they thought was a scrumptious bed and fell sound asleep. Much too early the next morning, a loud clanging woke them up. Sooty clouds of smoke were pouring over them, and they heard a strange voice purring loudly. "Sauces and hams, it's hungry I am. Sauces and hams, it's hungry I am. Mice in my stew, wait till I catch you. Who do you think that is?" The Country Mouse asked his wife. The Town Mouse and his wife were up with the birds, ready to gather wild blackberries in the grassy meadow for breakfast. They could smell them, they couldn't find them, and the Town Mouse wife turned to remind her husband. There, and who's watching 'em but the owl? Remind her husband on the way home. She felt a large, wet drop on her head. "What was that?" she said. "It's the bathtub leaking?" "No, we're in the country now," he said. "Those are raindrops." Just like lightning lit up the sky, and the rain poured down as the two drenched mice ran wildly for their tree stump home. The Country Mice were looking forward to their first splendid meal in the pantry. "I'm sure there's ham in the ice chest, rolls in the bread box, but the best smell of all is coming from up there," the Country Mouse told her husband. "It must be fine old cheese. I'll climb up on your shoulders and get it." But she couldn't quite reach. "Stand on your toes," she called down, but just as she got a hold of the cheese, her husband lost his balance. The top slammed down and she was left hanging by her tail. Help me, I'm caught." Back in the country, the Town Mouse had put on dry clothes. He was especially proud of his bright new jacket. So colorful and eye-catching, he told his wife. "Let's stroll in the forest. We'll come back loaded with acorns and hickory nuts," but their walk was soon interrupted. The Town Mouse's colorful coat was eye-catching, that it caught the eye of a curious blackbird, and his wife hadn't held him by his foot. He would have been carried off. Not far from town, the Country Mouse felt his wife's silky tail. "Nothing broken," he said, but when he looked at her eyes, he saw how sad and discouraged she was. "I know something that will cheer us up," he said. "Follow me." He had spied a small window up above the pantry shelves. Together they climbed to get higher and higher. When they reached the top, he rubbed away the soot and they looked out a piece of blue sky. "Doesn't it look like home?" the Country Mouse asked his wife. The Town Mouse stood quietly after their awful blackbird scare. "I thought I had lost you forever," the Town Mouse whispered to her husband. They looked around. How still and peaceful it was now. The sun had come out and everything was glistening and green. "It is beautiful here," she said. "We should try to enjoy it." "I know," the Town Mouse said, "but I miss the sound of the town, all the hustle and bustle. Here I feel so alone in our cozy townhouse." "We knew what to expect," his wife added. I see somebody watching them. Do you see those eyes? The country mice knew to stay at home in the thunderstorm, and they knew what to expect from the hungry owl, but they soon found that there were different dangers here. When they tasted a tasty morsel of blue cheese sitting on a pine board, this time you take the cheese, I'm still shaking from being caught in the cheese box, the country mouse said. So her husband crept toward the cheese, whiskers trembling as he reached for it. His foot slipped and he heard a whoosh, followed by an enormous snap, and was thrown across the room. He landed in a warm bundle of something soft and furry. Uh-oh, where'd he land? The country mouse was shaking from his close call. I can barely stand, he winced, and his wife pulled him back up and patted down his crumpled whiskers. It was then that she noticed the bundle on which her husband had landed was tipping and turning. It's alive. Two green eyes snapped open. Run, she said. She tried getting a good look at it. It's an owl with teeth. What do we call that? The cats. The town mice knew how to avoid mouse traps set with cheese, but they soon found that the country had its own perils, and they explored the river hand in hand. Suddenly the water began to boil and churn, and a huge wet head popped up and stared at them. It was a river otter. The mice tore back to their tree stump home, only to find a hedgehog rolling into a ball in front of the door. They'd heard an animal crashing towards them through the underbrush. I can't take this any more, the town mouse quaked, and he raced for the nearest tree with her husband behind. From the tree they could see the town lights blink as the sun went down, and the stars came out one by one. What shall we do? The town mouse asked his wife. Before she could answer, they saw a pair of glowing eyes right beside them. They were face to face with the most terrifying creature of all, a cat with wings, shrieked the town mouse. That's it for me, the wife cried, and they ran down the tree toward the town as fast as their legs could carry them. What do we call that? An owl. As the town mice headed frantically towards the road, and the country mice were fleeing in terror toward the country, their paths crossed, but neither saw the other. They were so frightened. Even the sky seemed to be falling down on them, and the country mice didn't stop running until they could see their tree-top home in the distance. The town mice kept on running until they reached the townhouse. The musty smell of old wood, the smoke from the kitchen, all seemed wonderful. Even the street sounds outside sounded cheerful and friendly. There's no place like home, sighed the town mouse, as he and his wife settled into a warm old slipper. There's no place like home. And their cozy tree stump house, the country mouse and her husband looked up at a full moon shining down on them. They sighed happily. We miss you, they said together. Back on the road, the cat and the owl had knocked each other out, and they collided head-on. The cat, slowly waking up, touched his bruised head gingerly. He looked up at the owl, brushing himself off. It was then he had an idea. Owl, how would you like to trade places with me? I've always wanted to try simple life in the country. Ooh, maybe the story continues. I hope you enjoyed Town Mouse, Country Mouse by Jan Rett.